Welcome to The Explainer. I'm so thrilled you're joining me today because we are going to do something really fun and honestly maybe a little shocking. We're going to strip away all those romanticized Hollywood filters of history and myth to uncover the gritty, sometimes horrifying, but absolutely fascinating truths underneath. So forget the pristine marble statues, forget the chivalrous knights in shining armor. Today, we're looking at the raw, messy reality of the past. Let's get into it. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is a quick roadmap of where we're headed. We've got 4 stops today. 1, the dysfunctional divine. 2, mortal pawns and punishments. 3, the medieval peasant nightmare. And lastly, 4, queens who seized power. Section 1, the dysfunctional divine, or as I like to think of it, Olympus as a deeply toxic workplace. Now, before we even talk about human history, we have to look up at the heavens. Specifically the ancient Greek gods. Pop culture loves to present Olympus as this place of divine harmony, nobility, and, infinite wisdom. But the mythological reality, it was essentially a centuries-long soap opera. I mean, we are talking about constant infidelity, truly bizarre animal-based flirtations, and what would absolutely amount today to massive HR violations. They didn't rule with serene logic, they ruled with extreme pettiness. Now, what's really interesting about this is how perfectly the gods fit into the dynamic of a highly dysfunctional corporate office. You've got Zeus as the CEO, right? He has absolute power but zero understanding of personal boundaries, frequently turning into swans or bulls just to flirt with mortals. Then there's Hades. Pop culture always makes him the bad guy, but really, he's just the goth middle manager stuck overseeing customer service for the dead for eternity. He's just chronically tired. Hermes is basically your over-caffeinated IT guy who solves your problem in 2 minutes but probably steals your wallet on the way out. And poor Hephaestus, he literally built Olympus, but he's treated like the unpaid intern, constantly disrespected and just muttering under his breath while fixing everyone else's messes. Moving right along to Section 2, mortal pawns and punishments, caught in the crossfire. So this petty divine drama usually resulted in absolute disaster for the everyday mortals who just happen to catch their attention. Because when gods throw tantrums, it's the humans who pay the price. Take the story of Psyche. She was a mortal girl whose only crime was being so beautiful that people stopped worshiping Aphrodite. Out of pure divine jealousy, Aphrodite forced her to endure this grueling timeline of impossible trials, just for the right to love her son, Eros. First, she was given exactly 1 day to sort a massive mountain of mixed seeds. She only survived that because an army of empathetic ants came to help her. Then she had to gather golden fleece from violent killer rams at dusk. After that, fetch cursed water from the deadly river Styx. And finally, she was sent to the underworld to retrieve a box of beauty from Queen Persephone, which actually turned out to be a trap containing eternal sleep. And the wild thing is, Psyche was actually one of the lucky ones. Consider Medusa. The legend tells us she was this monstrous gorgon, born to turn heroic men to stone. But the reality is so much darker. Medusa wasn't born a monster at all. She was a deeply pious mortal priestess serving in Athena's temple. When the sea god Poseidon violated her inside that very sanctuary, Athena didn't punish the god. Nope, she punished the mortal victim, turning Medusa's hair to serpents and ensuring anyone who looked at her would turn to stone. It was a curse of total, permanent isolation. It really makes you pause, doesn't it? Sometimes the monster is not the one with fangs, but the one holding the sword. History and myth have this incredible capacity to weaponize trauma, basically taking victims and reshaping them into convenient villains just to make the heroes look better. Section 3, the medieval peasant nightmare. Time to look at the mud below. Let's bring ourselves crashing all the way down from the heavens and into the literal mud of 1325 Europe. We are going to completely strip away those lovely notions of romantic nights, chivalry, and grand feasts. I want you to really imagine this visceral horror. You wake up on a freezing morning sharing a half-rotted, flea-ridden straw mattress with 8 other people, and yeah, probably some livestock too. Step 2, you relieve yourself in a wooden bucket in the corner of the room. Step 3, you lean out your window, yell "Gardy Lou," and chuck the contents of that bucket directly into the open street, which is essentially just an open sewer. And step 4, breakfast time. You sit down to a bowl of gray, gloopy pottage that's been simmering for weeks, paired with a cup of weak beer. Why beer? Well, because drinking the water would absolutely kill you. And this brilliantly illustrates just how perilous everyday life was, especially when it came to your health. Let's say you get a toothache from chewing on your rock-hard bread. There are no dentists. right? You go to a barber surgeon, literally the same guy who cuts your hair, who pulls your tooth in the dark with iron pliers, zero anesthesia, zero sterilized tools. Medical diagnoses were entirely based on balancing the four humors: blood, phlegm, and yellow or black bile. Have a fever? Oh, they're going to drain your blood with a dull blade or maybe some hungry leeches. Medicine in this era was essentially polite torture.
To put all that into perspective, if you lived past 40 in the Middle Ages, you weren't just old, you were a statistical miracle. Life for a peasant wasn't about thriving, it was a slow-motion endurance test that was entirely about surviving the elements, surviving disease, and surviving back-breaking labor from sunrise to sunset.
Finally, Section 4. Queens who seized power, the mortals who rose above it all. Now, I definitely don't want to leave you stuck in the mud, so let's pivot away from the victims of history to the incredible, brilliant women who looked at these brutal, male-dominated worlds, totally understood the rules of the game, and manipulated them to their absolute advantage. Let's start with Catherine the Great. She shows up in Russia at just 14 years old as Sophie, this completely obscure German princess with basically zero power. But she was so cunning. She immediately set to work learning the Russian language and converting to the Orthodox faith just to win over the public in the court. She endured a completely erratic, immature husband, Peter III, in a highly toxic environment. And then, when the time was right, without firing a single shot, she orchestrated a brilliant, bloodless military coup to depose him and seize the throne for herself. So the crucial point here is this staggering number, 200,000. That is the number of square miles Catherine the Great added to the Russian Empire during her reign. She didn't just survive a coup, she proved her sheer unmatched competence by expanding Russia's borders, reforming its laws, and turning it into a formidable European powerhouse. Now let's shift gears and head across the globe to the jungles of Mesoamerica to look at another absolute master of power, the Red Queen of Palenque. Discovered in a sealed 7th century sarcophagus, her remains were completely covered in toxic red cinnabar. To the ancient Maya, this vibrant red powder wasn't just decorative, it was a deeply sacred symbol of blood, sacrifice, and cosmic rebirth. Her power wasn't just written in dusty records, it was immortalized through sacred ritual and grand architecture. The Red Queen is a powerful reminder that Maya royal women were absolutely not passive consorts. They were the very glue of the royal order. They acted as high-level diplomats, priestesses, and major power brokers. They conducted massive rituals and were equal participants in the brutal game of political legitimacy. Sometimes they even ruled outright as queen regents, like Sakuk, who held the throne of Palenque until her son came of age. And, we really can't talk about women mastering the game without a quick nod to Eleanor of Aquitaine. She was one of the wealthiest and most powerful women in Western Europe during the High Middle Ages. She is the ultimate reminder that mastering human nature was the key to outwitting kings. She ruled not through armies, but through influence, which, as it turns out, proved to be the most enduring weapon of all to rewrite history. So what does this all mean? That brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. When we actively choose to strip away the romantic myths, the flawless marble statues, and the Hollywood filters, what hidden truths about power, survival, and human nature do we finally see? It turns out the past isn't just a fairy tale. It's a masterclass in resilience, ambition, and the very messy reality of what it means to be human. I really hope this sparked your curiosity to look just a little bit closer at the history you've been taught. Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep questioning the story.